analogies. They might be monitoring, performance, capacity management. They're doing all sorts of jobs within the IT environment, and they also happen to collect inventory data. So in and of itself, that may not be a problem. Where the problem comes in is trying to move all of those data sets into a single store, whether you normalize, reconcile. And so, Forrester and many other analysts have done studies that says, why is inventory such a challenge? And the premise here that I've got on the slide that I want you to think about is the reason it's a challenge is if your approach is to use existing tool sets, whether they were designed for discovery or not, and to try to munge data across different disparate tool sets, make sense of that data in one location, oftentimes, and I would submit that probably 98% of the time, in every case, when I go out to customers and I'll ask them, do you have devices collecting information about your network, your hardware, your software? Yep, we've got that. We'll very quickly get to how many. And the bigger the shop, generally speaking, the higher the number. I've got organizations right now that say they've got 50 different tool sets, and they built their own CMDB, or they're trying to populate ours or another vendor's CMDB. And again, so this problem is inherent. Well, they've got a lot of, they're sort of drowning in configuration data. What those tools always lack, in my experience, is beyond the configuration data. It's visibility into the relationships between the IT devices, as well as ultimately the business services or applications that those devices support. And so I guess the premise here that I'd like to sort of throw up on the table is the approach you use to building an accurate inventory of IT matters. It matters a lot. The approach that we've seen in the past of trying to munge data from multiple tools because they're already, quote, purchased or they're in-house, I've yet to meet the company that can take 20 plus discovery sources and make sense of them and have a single source of truth that all of these organizations you're looking at believe is accurate. And there's the operative word, right? So we saw historically over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, we saw IT service management over in the top left red bubble. We saw them sort of take ownership of the corporate inventory of IT as an adjunct or as part of ITIL or IT service management in that CMDB. And the problem is they sort of inherited the responsibility for it, and all these other groups that you see around this circle, they all wanted access to it, but they also all wanted to contribute to it. So you look at asset management, Dick, and they'd say, hey, our world revolves around usage and license entitlements, so that needs to be in the CMDB. Well, usage and license entitlement, while very important to asset, not necessarily as important to operations management or even security, right? Where they're literally just looking for what are my blind spots, things I don't know about in my data center, where do I need to go remediate and update patches and versions and things like that. And so the service management team became the daunting owner of this never-ending utopia, world peace kind of problem to take everyone's data set in and make sense of it. The reality is, you probably heard this statistic, 87% of CMDB projects that were started have failed to deliver value or deliver on the promise that they set out to. And I think that's one of the big reasons why. So when we talk about an inventory of IT, we talk about, BMC talks a lot about what we call a 360-degree view. And this is a comprehensive view of 3 components. It starts with the configuration of the devices. What is it? How is it configured? Be it a server, a database, a router, or what have you, or a storage device. The second piece, though, is that's not enough to have a standing list. That's a great asset store. But in order to really put it in context of managing service, we need to understand the dependencies between the configuration items. Say a database and a server. Is that an impact relationship? If that server goes down, does the database go down? And understanding those dependencies. And lastly, we need a place to view it. And by the way, that could be, operative word being could. It could be the CMDB. But it's not the CMDB as much as it used to be. I've got a lot of big organizations today that are pushing data from BMC or other tools into a CMDB, and I've got teams across this bubble stack, the teams like security. The IT security guys are saying, I don't want to access the CMDB. I don't like the UI, and it's got a lot more information than I need. And so I'm here to say that while it's important to pass discovery data to a CMDB, I think it's also important that the discovery tool be able to provide an autonomous view, an independent from the CMDB, no CMDB required, ability to quickly find things in my IT environment that it's scanned, visualize those, report on them, and export the data so I can actually go remediate. So that's what we believe is a 360-degree view. And it's, by the way, it's also what differentiates or separates, many of the tools on the market today that are called discovery tools from what we call discovery and dependency mapping. So if you buy into that theory that that's your 360-degree view, how do you get that view? And I would propose that there's only two approaches. There's this outside-in approach, right, where I'll build it out here. You've got all the data sources from different constituents. They all just want to feed someone who will sign up to own the CMDB or the data, the central data. They all want to push that data in. These are islands. They're sources of truth. There's no relationship data or service context. And it forces someone in the organization into the job of what I call data munging, where they're drowning in data, but they have no information. The other approach is the inside-out approach. And this is where we start from the center. And we use agentless technology specifically because we don't want to have to manage software distribution of the discovery tool across all of the agents. We use one platform and we do a single scan to collect everything in that 360 view. And that's different from you'll find in what you'll see today in the demo. BMC's discovery and dependency mapping solution is one solution. It's one platform. It's a single pane of glass. And it's a single solution that discovers all of the information in that 360 view. And when you compare that to competitive offerings, what you'll find is that some of our competitors will use multiple tools and multiple approaches to get at the same data we get in one tool. Right? And again, the ability to easily visualize and model. In other words, you don't have to push this data into a CMDB, normalize, reconcile, in order for people to actually go use it. Okay, so the right approach is great, right? Having the right approach and getting a 360 view and taking the inside, but having the right tool matters as well. And so, again, I'm going to kind of break out for you folks on the phone just what we believe, our perspective of what the right solutions would encompass. From a configuration standpoint, we think that every discovery solution should have an extensive pattern library. And what that means is, and I know some of these are hard to see, but when it comes to software versions, we've got 40,000 pre-built software patterns to recognize 40,000 different versions of software. 150 software vendors, 3,000 network device types. Bottom line, in any discovery solution, there will be patterns that are part of that discovery solution, which are pre-written to go find things in your data center environment. The more patterns that the vendor's written, the less you have to. And that's what it comes down to. We've got customers that are running all kinds of devices. And generally speaking, BMC on average can discover about 95% of most customer environments, from mainframe to cloud. And that's just because we've been doing this a while. We've got a lot of patterns that are already written. Again, when it comes to dependencies, it's a single architected solution. So the way we allow customers to go find relationships and dependencies is the same way that you find configuration data, because it's the same tool. That allows us to start from anywhere within the application stack. You can start your discovery scan from a database, from a server, any individual component within the string, and we will find both the config and the dependencies. And again, just if you got into an evaluation and looked at some additional tools, it's not that they can't find config and dependency data, it's just that they take a little bit longer to do it. According to some of the analysts, BMC tool drives about an 80% reduction effort to map applications, and that's just IDC's view. And then again, the inventory of where you put all this stuff. Two key components. One, you don't need a CMDB to be able to visualize and analyze this stuff. What Ann's going to show you here in the demo coming up is not in any way, shape, or form connected to a CMDB. Now, if you want to push this data into CMDB, we can push our data directly into BMC, Helix CMDB. We can push it into ServiceNow CMDB. Not only push it into their CMDB, but push it in supporting their best practices from a data model perspective. And you can push this data to other data consumers. So just as an example, we recently wrote a pattern to help our customers go find what we call rogue jobs. Cron jobs running in Unix or Windows Task Schedule jobs running across the thousands of Unix or Windows environments that they have. Discovery will go find these jobs. We can then take the output of those rogue jobs and import them into our enterprise job scheduling tool, or anyone else's for that matter. And so it's tools working together with other tools and leveraging that discovery data to really drive value for the customer. And then my last point, and I want to kind of go through this quickly so we can get to the end part of the session, is, IDC ran a study, and this is an ongoing study. It was done in early 2014. It was updated in 2016. It's recently been updated again, and I can get you a copy of this. But it really speaks to the value of a single integrated discovery and dependency mapping platform. And it talks about it from the standpoint of IT staff productivity gains on a per-server basis, risk mitigation, infrastructure cost reductions, that's the service management kind of tie-in, and then just overall business productivity benefits of being able to finally visualize all the stuff we manage in IT into the context of the business services. And as I call, kind of managing services, not servers. And then over on the right side of the screen, it's just an example of that IDC benchmark study applied to a recent customer financial institution, showing them that for every 27,000 servers, they're reducing costs by about $1.5 million. So with that, I know that's a lot of information, but I just kind of wanted to set a baseline of the discovery and dependency mapping sort of framework. And I've been working with Anne for so many years now and enjoyed her ability to really show the power of the solution and the technology itself. So without further ado, Anne?
Oh dear, now I feel, hopefully I can go ahead and show everything. I think I'll need to stop sharing.
Did I set you up, overset you up?
It does happen, no problem. And Valerie, I am unable to share. Does you need to stop sharing first?
Oh, there we go. Looks like
there, yeah, okay. Hopefully everybody can see this full screen. If there's some boxes in the way, kind of close them down or move them aside. So, Discovery is a cool product. What can we say? As Jeff said, huge amount of power, a lot of information out there, on-premise, on cloud, etc. Because this particular webinar is focused towards security, I wanted to bring up a dashboard that we have in our demo environment that's really around some security risks. Heartbleed's a little bit old at this point. The WannaCry is a little bit old, but the key thing is being able to know what those vulnerabilities are, and coming here when you hear about something, being able to build a dashboard and finding out what it is. Maybe you want to know what these 2008 servers are, so you can go ahead and click down on here and start doing some examination of them. Of course, I could go ahead and do a whole lot of reports against them, but I'm actually just going to go ahead and visualize this one. And now I can see that this particular 2008 server is really around my old footprint system. If I start getting an idea, maybe I don't even need this, so it's okay that I'll just take it off the network, or do I need to upgrade it, make sure it's not vulnerable, etc. And then down below it, again, just a lot of information. Communicating with a couple different hosts. If I suddenly pull it out of service, those hosts are going to be a little surprised. I need to understand that impact if I do pull it out. And this is dependency model. You all probably heard about this tool being called Atrium Discovery and Dependency Mapping before it was called BMC Discovery. It's really what it's about. It's knowing how are things connected together. Not just the box has some software installed, but what are the other boxes it's talking to? What are the other software it's talking to? And we can get into, we can see into the Kubernetes containers and all the newest things that are coming along that I don't have all the terminology for, but we're able to start seeing how are things connected, what's going to happen if I pull them out. On this particular box, I can see it's Windows 2008. I can see some details about it. I may want to look and say, it should have been retired quite a while ago, but we did buy some extended support on it. And again, can I upgrade this? Do I have enough RAM? Do I have enough things coming on? Just a lot of information. I don't remember if Jeff referred to this, but Discovery is an agentless tool. So it's finding all this stuff and not having to have agents on all the stuff you're finding, but it's going to let you know what's out there. There's a tremendous amount of information about this particular Windows 2008 box that I can use to make my determination what I want to do with it. I want to see all the patches that are related to it. I can see that as well. If I go back to my home, there's another dashboard I want to hit. Because again, nobody's doing most people are not doing everything on premise now. There are still those of us who do tend to do everything on premise, but a lot of things are moving to the cloud as well. Well, BMC Discovery can now start looking at your cloud instances and seeing what's out there as well. Going on in the public cloud, about direct cloud software, if I come down and I click on this Microsoft Azure, I can now say, well, what kinds of things do I have out in there? Again, visualizing, modeling, I can start seeing my Azure clouds out there and seeing what's going on. Probably have a lot more than that, but we just wanted to bring this up so you can see that we can look at multiple things at the same time. Let's say I got something, some kind of alert from a system or something, and it's complaining about, I don't know, maybe Apache. Now I can dive down. I have a Apache web server dashboard that I can start looking at and start seeing what servers are running Apache. Which version is this, what operating system are they for? How many things I'm going to have to patch? And by the way, if you have the client management tool from BMC, it's a really great way to patch. And now I can start seeing, again, some different ways of which servers are running Apache, virtual, physical, etc. So a lot of good information I can come down into here. These are my web server versions. I wanted to look at this particular one. Again, I can see all those Apache ones. I can report on them. Let me go ahead and do a report, maybe some host dependencies. And now I'm going to get for these, depending on them. When did it get scanned, virtual, and so on. So you're already seeing, just from some dashboards that are built, that we can get to a lot of information that's going to help me as I'm managing my assets out there. But if I'm looking for something specific, and look for a remedy box, and I want to come into here and pick one of these. Remedy 8.1 box, like I'm modeling it. There's a lot of stuff on this picture. And yeah, I can go ahead and blow it up and do some expanding here as I'm zooming in. But one of the things I can do as well is go to my drag mode. Maybe I just want to pull out some of this stuff. I can go ahead and model that as well. So I've just removed some of the things from this diagram. It's still a little too busy. I can remove more stuff as well. And so you're seeing it's not just about stuff running on the boxes, but things it's connected to and things that we know about. The Atrium Integrator is running over here. Those of you that have used Remedy, some of this is looking familiar to you. And then I want to go ahead and click down on that mid-tier box and go ahead and look at some details around it. So pretty easy to come in and do things like this. If I don't see everything, maybe I don't care about the load balancers, I can go ahead and get rid of some things and again continue to clean up this model.
And I think, Ann, one of the things I constantly hear from customers is, again, if you think about that wheel of constituents, all these users or consumers of discovery data, they all want to see the data, but they all want to see it in their own way. And this is that interface I was talking about that, if I'm in the network world, I might want a network-centric view of this particular application stack. So I can create that view, save that model. It's now a model that I can rerun, and every time a scan interval is done, my model is going to be refreshed and updated and up to date and accurate. And so, it's sort of rather than having a CMDB team control all of the models and the build out of models for all these groups, this is a mechanism to sort of teach your constituents to fish. let them have access to the data. They can't run scans. They can't, change the discovery intervals. But what they can do is go build models, save models, and then have updated views at any point in time.
Exactly. It's so well, Jeff. So one of the things we get from customers every now and again is about load balancers and things like that. So yes, we can see behind the F5 in this case, but we can see behind load balancers and get the information out. Not a lot of stuff behind this, but we do get to see those as well as the containers and the other things. The BMC is constantly improving. I think I get emails monthly on the new TKUs or technical knowledge units that you can go ahead and upgrade or upload, because they're constantly trying to improve what data is going to be available out here. Again, if anything I click on, I can see some details down here. If I want to, again, contains load balancer services on that mid-tier. I can see some of the servers behind here, the host. And again, I can always click down on any of these and get to more detail. Of course, you can always just come up and run reports directly. I'm going to use this endpoint access analysis. I was looking at this just a little bit ago. And one of the things I noticed around here is just the sheer number of reports that I can get the details of. So I've got a lot of details here and also some actions I can do. So let me get into the detail. It's going to show me that. And that's not what I clicked on earlier. Maybe I didn't. I just clicked on one before. There are a lot of things you can do out here in the reports. The data is here. You can. I apologize, I hit the wrong report. I know I had a great report I was going to show you, and now, of course, I can't find it. A lot of reports that are pre-built, you can do additional reports, you can access these things and do what you need to do to make sure that you're getting the information you've got in this particular device, in this particular system. I want to go ahead and do these. I can go ahead and export as CSV and do whatever I need to do on them. But we mentioned the knowledge packs before, so I did want to show you what that looks like and why you're really glad that BMC is building so many patterns. So here's a ADDM BMC discovery pattern, and this is an idea of the patterns. There are different ways, CAM and TPL and different other kinds of acronyms we can throw at you, but the key thing is if you have something that BMC hasn't already built a pattern for, you can absolutely build these as well. Luckily, because BMC has built so many of these, that's not something you normally have to worry about. BMC is going to go ahead and do that for you. This is probably a good time for those of you that are asking, but does it find XYZ? Let me go ahead and bring up the docs site. I'm going to go ahead and bring up our docs site, docs.bmc.com. Go into BMC Discovery. And Discovery 11.3. We changed our docs site recently, apparently. I haven't been out on Configpedia for a while. But there is actually a Configpedia out here that's going to give you a lot of information about what BMC discovers. So I've had customers say, well, does it discover XYZ? And I don't, quite frankly, because I'm not in this every day like you are, I sometimes don't even know if XYZ is software or hardware. We can go ahead and come out here, start looking for the products or search for it on the pages, however I want to do it, to say, well, do we find it or we don't find it? And click on, you see the various things here, discover on both network devices, etc. So go to docs.bmc, pick the latest version of Discovery, look at Configpedia, and your questions will be answered in terms of what do we actually find.
The only exception to that I think I want to speak to you real quickly, Ann, is the ability to discover multi-cloud. So as Ann mentioned, we can discover across multiple cloud providers, so a wide array ranging from AWS, Microsoft, Google, and then we also go pretty deep within each cloud provider. So if there's an interest on the phone in terms of the question, what do you discover in AWS or Azure? While those may not be on the list yet that you're looking at, I can provide those to you. And it's growing daily, like Ann said. Azure and AWS specifically, it seems like every day there's a new microservice that they're offering, and each month what we'll do is just continue to push updates. And again, it's not that you couldn't go write your own pattern in our tool, but we want to be able to write the pattern so the customers can just discover without having to write code. That makes sense.
I wanted to click down on Kubernetes again because that's one of the newer ones, so you know. And again, some of this is only available to customers, so either become a customer or you're really nice to one of us and we'll download a page or two for you guys. But again, we are going to discover Kubernetes, even though it's something fairly recent. We're going to be able to dive in and find things on that about that as well. So just a heck of a lot of stuff out here, a lot of information. Jeff, I'm surprised you haven't gotten the cloud stuff out here yet, but I'm sure that'll be there soon. So that's always, if you're wondering, do we find it, start here. And again, you can always build your own patterns. And these, again, was what a pattern looks like. So be glad that we do so many of them. There are integrations and other things. We're not going to dive into that today. I did, again, just like to point out all the knowledge things because that's one of the key benefits. So along with a start anywhere modeling, along with the being able to dive down and really see the details, being able to see the knowledge packs that we have and just know that we're not just going to give you a few things. We really do have, 10 plus years of knowledge behind this. So when you get this product, it's robust. Generally what we find is we start implementing at a customer site, we'll get it up, we'll get it going, and then we'll kind of leave for a little bit. We'll come back after, we'll spend a week there, we'll leave, we'll come back another week or two, and it's just grown and it's finding out more and more things. The hard part about a discovery integration implementation, to be honest, is all of you. Not you on the phone, but all of the people you work with who don't want to give you credentials under their boxes, who don't want to let you see their boxes. So we've had it at times where discovery gets to a certain point, and then maybe the Linux box people just don't want to share anything. So they really block access, and then we get to work a little higher in the organization so we can get to those as well, because we're not doing anything to these boxes. We're just finding them, modeling them, so everybody knows what's going on. Everybody's on the same sheet of paper as changes happen. Really big in data center moves and migrations because you got to know what you have to know what you're moving. But again, really the only obstacle we've hit is when people just don't realize the value that can come by getting their boxes into the whole network. Jeff, I don't know if you have other things you've seen as blockages in the implementation, but that's really been the only one I've ever noticed.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. And like you said, we do find it. We just can't discover it without the credentials. And so what we'll generally do is do that find list and work with leadership who's generally supporting the discovery for IT inventory purposes and go get privilege and access. The other thing that might be worth mentioning is candidate software instances. So just very quickly, we know that inevitably every customer has custom applications within their environment. So we can and do find those under basically a software instance. We allow you, once it's been discovered, to actually go in, brand it, name it within the discovery tool, so that on each subsequent scan, we now know what to call it from a custom application perspective. But
that's a good point.
We do identify
it says like a generic name, so it's much nicer if you can identify them. That's a good point.
Yep.
Just taking us back to the baseline dashboard, they're actually, if you go to bmc.com and go to their trial section, you can pull up a trial instance of discovery, and it's going to look pretty similar to this one. So you can just start coming in and playing with it, hitting on some of these, and this is BMC data, not your data, obviously, or BMC demo data. It's not real data. But you can start seeing the kinds of things that are out here, do your visualizing and modeling, do your reporting, just kind of finding out what's going on out there. So any of you can go, bmc.com. There's a link on there to get to trials. And if you want to play around with this, you can do that. Or if you want to get an in-depth demo or a discussion about this with a RightStar consultant, we can also set that up as well. I think that's all I had for today, Jeff, unless you had anything else that I was supposed to show that I didn't.
Nope. I think that's perfect. And I wanted to make sure that we do leave some time for questions. Hope we've got some interaction and questions from the folks.
Yeah, Jeff did an excellent job, and we do have some questions coming in. But while we're waiting, in fact, now would be a good time to ask a question. Again, you can go to the Q&A box, and we'll pull it right out. But one question, and Jeff, you talked a little bit about this, is that oftentimes it's not just some of the government customers that we see, but it's large, big commercial outfits as well that have bought a variety of different tool sets. In particular, there'd be discovery tool sets, and they might have Splunk, they might have Science Logic, they might have SCCM. And if you look at some of the customers that we've seen, we could probably easily say, hey, you have one or too many tools, and that BMC Discovery will really take the replace of some of these other tools that you have. Is there any suggestions that you would have if to talk to a customer that's sort of wrestling with this, is that you don't really need those other tools, that BMC Discovery will do it? How can we show that, or how can we say that? Is it based upon the functionality of the product itself? And any other ideas that?
Yeah, it is. It's partly functionality, but it's going to fall into two areas, because every customer I meet with has discovery tools, plural. The larger ones, some of the largest banks in the country, who again they've got upwards of 25 different tools. What'll generally happen is we'll get called or engaged by someone outside of the team that owns the whatever you want to call it, CMDB, the central source where everybody pushes data. A lot of times it's security. Sometimes it's DR. But I would call it their constituents or consumers of the discovery data, and they're coming at us saying, we understand you can holistically discover everything in our IT environment, so we could, for once have a single source of truth. Could you help us show us that? We go in, and a lot of times they've already sort of got a single source of truth organization. But I'm just going to be candid here. The security teams in particular don't trust the data, because they know it's being pushed from multiple sources. So a lot of times what it comes down to when we do engage the CMDB teams is we'll basically show them proof. And proof comes in the form of two ways. One, and we call it blind spot detection, but we worked with a large bank, had a CMDB. Again, the CMDB team believed it was accurate. The IT security team did not have confidence that it was accurate. They invited us to come in and basically do a gap analysis, discover one application in our CMDB, and if you can find things that exist in our infrastructure that are not in the CMDB, you've got our interest. We found 36,000 network endpoints, amongst other things, AS400s, mainframes, that were part of their ATM processing application stack. They were not in the CMDB, and they were on our report. Within less than 4 or 5 days of running our tool, we found all these devices. Well, you can imagine the network security team kind of freaked out, like, oh my gosh, how could we not have network endpoints, access points in the CMDB? The very next question was, application modeling, or what they call application rationalization. We need to be able to visualize the underlying IT in relation to the business applications that they're supporting. They told us it was taking them upwards of 9 months using another discovery and dependency mapping tool. We mapped and modeled the ATM application in the same week we were there. So A, finding more, finding blind spots. B, modeling the applications much easier, much faster. And then C, ultimately the security team at the bank said, okay, great. So we found all these network endpoints. Now what? That's not the solution. That just exposed the problem. What we showed them is by exporting through REST API, we pushed our list of discovered network endpoints to their in-house network patch solution and actually updated the patch version on those devices. They now call that whole sort of use case day zero compliance. The day they find a blind spot is the day it becomes compliant to security. So it's really the power of, kind of 1 + 1 = 3. It's just finding blind spots. That's powerful, but it's using the data from the discovery tool and pushing it to whatever source is going to go actually remediate or patch or update, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So it sounds a little bit like the proof, it's the old adage, the proof's in the pudding. So if we can show that this is a better tool, then more power, and turn off the old tool and on with the new sort of thing.
Yeah, and inevitably, it's like Ann said, every time we do a proof of value, a proof of concept, it's almost every time exclusive, we'll find more things in the customer's IT environment that didn't show up on a list.
And that kind of reminds me of, there's another question that comes up from time to time, and that is, you have the BMC Discovery, which is really designed for servers, although it works on endpoints as well. And then you have BCM, which is more of an endpoint product. But don't you have a lot of customers that actually do use the BMC Discovery for both servers and endpoints? Is that a common thing? Yeah.
It is because you can. I mean, we can find endpoints as long as they're connected to the network. Customers are using our discovery solution to find all kinds of things. There are patterns that have been written for healthcare devices that nurses wear in hospitals, for public utility devices out in the field. If it's got a connection, it really comes down to, what's the OS, what's the connection. You can extend the discovery tool to find lots of things. And I'm surprised every day at more and more use cases. That's a good point.
Okay. Well, here's a question that just came in. It looks like from a government account. Is there a FedRAMP version of BMC Discovery? And I know that BMC Discovery is available in the cloud now. Isn't that right?
It is. It is. And we're working on FedRAMP. So today, our discovery solution is available in a SaaS model on AWS. And much like in our ITSM world, we'll leverage the AWS FedRAMP moderate, I believe, environment to be able to support federal customers.
Okay. Here's another question. It says, how do you perform remediation? And I would assume there's a BMC tool that can be used to do this. But if they don't have that BMC tool, do they have their own tools? Is that what BMC recommends? If you find a blind spot, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, I use the word remediation, and I guess let me be clear. The discovery tool finds things. It's not the tool that's going to go actually remediate. What we'll do is find the list, in this case, the bank example I gave, we'll find the list of network endpoints and then, push that list to a patch remediation technology. So we're not going to actually remediate through discovery. We're going to find it, and we're going to provide the export of the list to either BMC's network automation tool or virtually anyone's. Okay. Same thing with scheduling. I talked about finding rogue jobs for scheduling. If in the case of BMC enterprise scheduling, our enterprise scheduling tool, Control-M, actually sees the discovered rogue jobs, and by the push of a button, you can import it. So it's all automated. It doesn't mean you can't use other enterprise scheduling tools, job scheduling tools. You certainly could. Okay.
There's another question in here that says, I think apparently you must have said something about there's an 80% reduction effort in building these dependency maps. And I know you said something else about how quick they can go up. So that means, I guess, there's 20% that you have to build. What's the implementation effort then to get BMC Discovery up and running?
Well, so two questions there. Implementation is not a project. Deploying our solution, be it on-prem or our SaaS offering, it's an appliance. It runs on a VM. We can usually be up and running in, hours or less. In terms of deploying a production environment, really that's just a function of how many servers and total endpoints and devices that we're going to be discovering. The technology can scale. Some of the largest companies in the world, including, J.P. Morgan, Apple, we're doing hundreds of thousands of servers scans. So from a scalability perspective, there's nothing we've really addressed that we can't scale to yet. But in terms of the implementation, it's very, very quick. Upgrades and keeping the technology current. I've got organizations, some of the largest retailers on the planet that are, managing 50,000 plus servers in our discovery environment. They have one discovery resource in the entire company. So it's not a heavy admin kind of tool from a maintenance or operational infrastructure perspective. And again, if you want us to run it in SaaS, we run it and scale it and admin that environment.
Yeah.
First part of the question, I think. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I didn't know if there was a second part to that question or not. Just in terms of
that 80-20 part.
Yeah.
I mean,
Here's what it comes down to. Modeling applications is partly about discovering the interdependencies between IT devices and the applications that are supported. That's a big part of it. So we're going to save a company a lot of time in that versus either manual efforts or using other tools that require different tools or approaches to discover the application layer. The other piece of it is, okay, great. Now I went and discovered my app, but kind of putting meaning, putting context. And you saw when Ann pulled up that screen, we could go do a scan of an application and bring back, I'll call it kind of the Google Earth view of the app. It's like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff in that application. It's sitting down with the user and saying, let's pull out the stuff that's irrelevant. Let's create a model that makes sense to you. And that app modeling, you've got to teach people to do that. It's easy to do within the tool. It's drag and drop. It's click, point, and click. But sometimes you want to have a subject matter expert, an application owner sitting there going, nah, that's not really the way. Yes, that's the way it's connected, but that's not the way we look at it. And so that's more of the art piece of this that says we're going to get the data, but you guys can model it in a way that makes sense to you, and that's a learned experience.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Another question here is: have you seen BMC Discovery used within a healthcare facility? And I can answer that, but Jeff, why don't you go first? Okay.
I just recently, within the last 2 weeks, so the short answer is yes, many. Hospitals, healthcare organizations, some of the largest on the planet that are using BMC, first and foremost, to discover everything in the IT stack. But even beyond that, they're using us to discover, as I said, devices in the hospitals, ranging from TV monitors that are installed over the pharmacy departments, mobile handheld devices. Again, this is agentless. So agentless isn't the best approach for everything. So let me give you an example. I can discover cell phones, but the problem is cell phones are on or off intermittently all the time. And most companies that have deployed cell phone use have cell phone, software running on it that can do a much better job of collecting that data. So it comes down to what's the device, what's the mechanism for communicating and interfacing with it, and how much data do you want? Those are the questions we'll ask to determine or vet, is this the right approach, or maybe should you use your mobile device management solution if it's already running on there?
Yeah, and I just have a quick story. We just met with a very large hospital in central Pennsylvania, and they had rolled out BMC Discovery at the first of the year and got everything up and running just really in a matter of weeks. And one thing about this hospital, and this is a very common thing, there's been a huge amount of consolidation. I mean, hospitals are growing by acquiring other hospitals, and it's not just in Pennsylvania, but it's really everywhere. And so all of a sudden you might have had a hospital that was 10,000 employees, and 2 or 3 years later suddenly it's 20,000 employees, and that's the case in this particular instance. And so they find that when you're merging all these different IT departments, you have a little bit of everything, and you don't have the same discipline and standards use, and all of a sudden you need a tool like BMC Discovery to figure out what's out there, because there's been a number of different surprises where they've gone in and they were able to find the software, but then they couldn't find where they had actually had software licenses. So that's a problem. And you want to be compliant, or you'll get a big surprise bill. So that was just one quick it's a sort of success story where they've been able to take advantage of it and use it to really get a good grasp on what they're acquiring. And we suggested, well, why don't you use Discovery before you make the acquisition so that you can see what you're getting your hands into before it's too late. But that was a no-go. They said, no, we can't do that until they bring them on board. So
yeah, no, that's a great use case. There's always mergers and acquisitions, and as soon as the ink's dry, you want to basically find out, what did we just inherit? What's part of IT now? So it's a good point.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions we have, and we're really nearing the top of the hour anyway. So, Jeff, I certainly wanted to thank you for taking your time, and everybody that's out there, thank you for spending the past 55 minutes or so with us during this webinar, and Ann, especially thanks for your demo capabilities. Jeff, if you wanted just to go, if you can find that one slide, or maybe that's Ann. Anyway, it has at the very end of the presentation, there's some numbers to contact. So if you take a look at that, you can see that you can contact RightStar either through the phone, either through hitting our website. You can certainly send us an email as well, and we can get you your own personal demo, or we can do a POC if that's something that you'd be interested in doing. The other thing, a quick announcement, we do these webinars on a regular basis. I think the next one is coming up in a week or so. Hopefully you're on the address or invite list, and it's going to be about chatbots. So I think it's something that you'd be excited to learn a little bit more about. So